Hi, welcome to Let's Talk Careers. I'm your host, Lisa Bauman. Today we're going to be talking with Kathryn Brillinger, who's the Executive Director for the Teaching and Learning Center here at Conestoga College. Kathryn has built her career as a TESOL certified professor, and now she's teaching faculty on how to hone their teaching skills. We had a fascinating discussion about teaching as an apprenticeship. Her viewpoint is that the journey takes approximately 10 years to move from novice to competent to expertise. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Kathryn. Thanks very much for coming out. I'd like to get you to introduce yourself with an elevator pitch that we use in the classes. And we've been modeling this through the podcast. And I call it the James Bond style of an elevator pitch. And so instead of doing it like backwards, Bond, James Bond, we're going to just say your first name and then a pause and then your first name and then your last name. And then feel free to say, what your current role is, something you're passionate about, another way that you like to introduce yourself.
All right. Kathryn Brillinger. My current role is Executive Director of Teaching and Learning at Conestoga College. I've been teaching since 1986 and love every minute of it. Every class is an adventure.
And I have to say, I've had the pleasure of being in your audience, so to speak, and I'm still just fascinated by your skill and your ability to bring people through kind of a client, an apex, right, of their learning journey. And I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that. But let's go to the early days. Let's go to sort of like your first job, your maybe as a young person or graduation, whatever point that you want to talk about. You could even talk about growing up. What did you want to do?
Sure. I wanted to teach from the very beginning. I loved to organize my friends and neighbors into classrooms. And I had the opportunity in high school when there were refugees coming from Vietnam to teach ESL for the first time. So my English marks were good, so I got to skip English class and go into what was then called a withdrawal room with students who spoke no English. And I realized what a gift it was to be able to explain things clearly, get people excited about new learning and alleviate their nervousness. So I then decided I want to teach ESL and travel the entire world.
Okay.
Went to university for a TESOL certificate, an undergrad degree related to teaching. My undergrad is exceptionality in human learning, so mostly psych, sociology. But instead I got married and had 4 kids, so I couldn't travel the world with my ESL credentials. Instead, I started teaching in Toronto. International students at a private school. That was my very first job. And then I found out I could get paid more in the college system. So I hopped over. So I was thinking, how can I make a career out of this, make money out of this, and have fun? And I found the college system was wonderful and been in that since 1986.
So is that when you came to Conestoga?
Actually, I came to Conestoga in 2003. So I've been here a little over 20 years now. But I was at 4 different colleges in the Toronto area prior to that.
Prior to coming here. Yeah, that's amazing. So you come to so you were in private schools, then you started at your first college. How did you make your way to Kitchener? How did you make your way to Conestoga?
I actually was doing a really large presentation at TESOL Ontario, which is the provincial conference for ESL teachers. And one of the chairs from Conestoga was there and saw me delivering this workshop on how to teach pronunciation and said, if we have a posting, you should apply. And I did and got the full-time faculty role, which I absolutely loved. But I got bitten by the bug of faculty development really, really quickly. I started doing workshops for faculty and they seemed to click for me and for the faculty. So started then doing that half-time, full-time, and moved from associate director to executive director.
Yeah. So how long did you spend sort of doing the double role? How long in your career?
About 10 years, actually. So from around 2003 to 2013, I was full-time faculty and I had my feet supporting the faculty development area and was teaching into different schools, understanding how they all operated. And so it was a gradual transition.
Yeah. And how did you find out about that opportunity? I'm just sort of thinking about, was it sort of networking through the college? Was it?
Yeah, it was networking.
Connections?
Yeah, it was making connections and networking. I was doing what was available then as faculty development. And I said, wouldn't it be interesting if we had workshops on paralinguistics for teaching? talk to people about how they use their gestures and their voice and their smile and all of that kind of thing. And the person then in charge said, oh, that's something that I wouldn't be comfortable doing. Why don't you do it? And I said, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. It was kind of on a volunteer basis at that time because I was full-time faculty. And then I got seconded one course and then two, and then so on and so on. So yeah, I think it's so important to make connections and to ask when you want to try something different.
Would you say that it sort of had a little bit of an unfolding as opposed to like, you know, because sometimes we sort of set out to do these things, right? Yeah. But it sounds like maybe your story was a little bit more of that.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both because I didn't intend to move from my full-time faculty role. Right? It took me a long time to get it, and I was going to stay there. At the same time, as part of that role, I was doing teacher training in our TESOL program. We have a program for people who want to teach ESL. And so I knew all the literature on how faculty learn because I was looking at it for there, and I was like, that is an interesting area for me. Yeah. Maybe I could help.
Yeah, take that somewhere else. As you were making some of these decisions, was there any elements, you know, in terms of like, yes, I want to do more of this, or no, I don't want to do this? Was there any elements that kind of came into play that was sort of critical in your thinking as you were kind of deciding?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest decisions was to leave a unionized environment, which I was in as a faculty member, to move into an administrative role, which is non-unionized. I had 4 children at that time. They're grown up now. And I was thinking, is that a risk I want to take? And I did. Okay. Right. So
how did you think through that decision? What was your...
I figured nobody could ever want to get rid of me. That was basically it. I was like, I'll do it well, and I'll be secure. Yeah. That was kind of my thinking, actually.
Yeah. So then you got into you said it was the associate director.
First I moved into a full-time consultant role. So from the faculty role, full-time consultant, worked with faculty. I did workshops, pretty much anything, consultations, observations, and realized there wasn't enough of me to go around. Conestoga was starting to grow.
Well, I was going to say, talk about that growth.
So I had come from the metro area where we had lots of international students and newcomers to Canada, but at Conestoga it was new. So I started doing workshops on intercultural communication, and people really wanted to learn about that. And so in order to do that more and less of the other, the college allowed me to bring more people on board. So it's currently quite a large department.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I think we intersected at around, I'm not sure. I feel like it was around
2007, 8 maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say 2007, 2008. Yeah. And it was, I remember it was yourself primarily.
It was just me.
Yeah.
Me, myself, and I. Yeah. And in some ways, that's a beautiful thing in a job role because I could pretty much decide what I thought was useful. And I did all kinds of weird and wonderful workshops like hallucinating in the classroom. And I didn't have to pass my ideas by anybody. And they worked. But when you get larger, you're collaborating and coordinating and looking at what's best.
What did that transition look like for you? How quickly did you grow? Because I do remember like suddenly you would have, I can think of at least 3 people who were in the team. So how did that growth?
Yeah. So as soon as I had an argument for why we would need another person to support this project or that project, then the college looked at it and agreed. So we went from myself in 2013 to probably around 2021. There was myself and 4 consultants just before the pandemic. Yeah, just before the pandemic, and a support staff person and 2 support staff people. And then during the pandemic, we grew again. We needed to train thousands of faculty in how to teach effectively on Zoom within a week, right? I mean, that's an ambitious thing, but I said to my team, if we can't do it, we're not useful to the college and to the faculty. And we did it. We had, we shut down the Monday after we started doing like 15 workshops a week on how to teach effectively on Zoom.
Yep.
So that growth was needed to support that. And then as the college grew with students, we needed to be able to serve more. So now I have 11 people with PhDs reporting to me that are in the consultant role. Other individuals at the master's level or Bachelor of Education. We've got such a rich team, which you can look at on the Faculty Learning Hub about us. And it's just wonderful.
Yeah. And you've as you've grown that team, you've kind of dived into different areas of specialty to focus on some of the different growing needs that are happening in the field.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So when I first was hiring the consultants, I was looking for intercultural skills. I was looking for people who understood the needs of students who spoke English as a second or additional language, who understand a culture of stress, who could talk to faculty about what students might be experiencing in this new venue. So that's what I was looking for at the beginning. And then I looked for someone who had equity, diversity, and inclusion in their background, formal experience and training in that area. Then I looked for someone who was really experienced with international students specifically. Found that person. Looking for ed tech people, found them. Just really thinking about whatever was happening in the college system and finding people to match that. So
Now you have specialists in assessment.
Yes, now the team's divided in three. We have a team that focuses on scholarship of teaching and learning and assessing student learning effectively. Got the faculty development areas responsible for onboarding and orientation all the way up to sharing ideas as you're preparing to retire. And then we've got another area, which is innovation and educational technology. Yeah. And so 3 different focuses with great people in them.
Yeah. And the team went from 1 to how many are there now?
I think we're 17 altogether now. And there's some postings up still.
Yeah. 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 And that's within 10 years?
Yeah, within 10 years. Yeah. Yeah.
And so as you kind of reflect on that, what do you think? What do you think about that journey or that process? Or
I think it's been amazing. I've really appreciated the support I've had from the college. We're the biggest teaching and learning center in any of the 24 colleges, and having such a rich group of people to have conversations about things. No one ever agrees, right, on anything, but that allows us to think, oh, maybe we've missed something in that workshop. Maybe we didn't think through that. We now have credit micro-credential courses for faculty, 6-hour ones. Maybe we didn't think through that successfully. We also have Indigenous knowledge holders who come and teach in those courses for us. So besides my actual team, there's other individuals across the college from curriculum, from other areas who support us in areas that we don't have the expertise in.
Yeah. It's a lot of growth. It was a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And was there any point in time when you were like, what am I doing? What are we doing? Or did you just like, let's go.
I think I'm very strategic. My favorite hobby is playing chess, right? So I'm always thinking strategy and tactic. And I think the growth was logical and paced, even though it may seem really rapid. And I would meet with people, the new hires, once a week for the first while, and then monthly, and just make sure they were okay. So it didn't feel overwhelming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Did you ever second guess this process? You're
of
just
course. I mean,
confident though. That's the thing that always strikes me is like, you're wonderfully confident, focused, driven to where you want to go, right?
On the surface. But I mean, even when I'm teaching, I'm like watching 35 people and in the back of my mind is, are we okay over here? Are we okay over here? So there's a lot of thinking going on in the background. But I mean, generally, I think in leadership in the classroom or leadership for my team, I'll show my vulnerability when I need to, but I think I need to have an approach that I feel is solid and can defend and talk about. So did I ever second guess it? No, sometimes it was too busy or is too busy, but that's usually the beginning of a semester for every single person at the college. And you think, my goodness, this is too much. And then it settles down a little bit. You catch your breath and you say, this is wonderful. And then it starts again. So, and I know that cycle so well.
Yeah. It's the rhythm.
Yeah.
Right. It's the rhythm that's been created and kind of gone through. It is really, truly a kind of an incredible legacy that you've kind of come to, right, at this point in time. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, if you kind of go back and you think, oh, maybe we would have done it this way, or maybe, but it seems like that you were like all the time right there where you were going to go.
Yeah, I can't think of any major misstep in terms of supporting the group that I'm in. Seems to have worked really, really, really well.
Yeah. So let's switch gears. I remember when we were sitting in the ISW workshop, so instructional skills workshop, the very first time, and you were teaching me how to say charisma. And you have an incredible way of being able to, like you said, pace people through and take them through that arc of, I think it's like an arc of learning. Yeah. As you kind of think back on some of your skill sets, how do you think that you've been able to do that with people? Like what magic do you have in there that lets you do that?
Yeah, I'll claim the magic from my mother and father. My
Okay.
father was an amazing speaker and preacher. And so from an early age, I would hear his voice and how he would mesmerize people. My mom also was an amazing teacher. So I think that helps growing up to hear those role models convincing people of things that are important to them. But I think it was really formal studies in the psychology of education that gave me the true magic, because when I understood people had to have disequilibrium. The students cannot know everything. They've got to be at a little bit of a level of stress before they open their mind. So probably when I was teaching you to say charisma, all right, you were like, oh, she's doing something that I want to do that I can't quite do yet. I have disequilibrium, but she seems to be trustable. So I think that's a huge part of it too. And she's going to guide me through it with controlled practice, semi-controlled practice, and free practice, and we're going to be okay. So I think it's that combination of skills that I honed that I had already learned, right? Because I can actually tell you what vowel I'm using when I'm speaking and what consonant I'm using and all of those things. So I know what I'm doing with my voice. I even know what I'm doing with my hands right now. I know that if I put my hands towards my heart and out to you 2 or 3 times in this conversation, you're much more likely to nod your head and agree with everything that I say. And we probably would have seen a speed up of your head as we were going through. So these things are at the level of my awareness at the same time that I'm speaking. And that's a skill anybody can learn, but not everybody has. And so I think that combination of formal studies and exposure and practice have been very, very helpful.
Yeah. I think I also think somehow that it's that language learning piece that somehow kind of has honed you into becoming a really good teacher. Because I think you could teach any subject.
Yeah, I'm teaching organizational behavior right now, which is
amazing.
Yeah, I love it. But it's not what I formally trained to teach, but it's going well. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I also think I remember you talking about having to go in and picking up a class in a subject that you were just absolutely no prepared, nothing, not ready. And you just went in and I'm like, okay, what's that secret there? What is that secret?
In that case, you make the students work, right? You just find out what they're learning about and say, here's 5 pieces of terminology, spend 2 minutes with each other and tell me what you know. And while they're spending 2 minutes and I'm walking around, I'm like, okay, I see what it's about. And now I'll share a little information. And if the students are active and if the students are participating, I've learned as much from them as I've delivered in any class. Yeah.
I am so fascinated because I have watched you and at the same time as trying to learn from you, right? And I think that's kind of the interesting thing. And then it's like, I think that's probably, so how can I replicate that, right, for myself? But then I think that maybe might be the motivation that you have had in terms of wanting to show faculty how they can do it themselves as well, right?
Yeah, I did a classroom management workshop last night and had a large number of faculty there thinking about how to manage the behaviors that they see in students in the classroom. And in order to do that well, I had to first make sure I'm not telling them what they're experiencing, but what is it you're experiencing in the classroom? And then I tell them what's worked for me, but they've got to layer that onto their own personality, their own subject matter in that. So I think there's got to be a balance between direction and freedom in order for anyone to accept the advice that I would offer out.
Yeah. How do you think AI is going to impact us?
So dramatically, like unbelievably dramatically. I think that I see myself in 10 years, if I wanted to study something, I would likely find out what the outcomes are I want to learn and punch them into AI and have some personalized tutoring and learning. But I'd still want a certificate from an institution. So I would want someone to kind of curate that a bit for me and examine my knowledge, skills, and attitudes by the end of it. So I do think we'll see shifts in what people want from educational institutions and what they expect and what they can do on their own, which is amazing for a lot of students.
Do you think I often sometimes think we might go back to that sort of original, I don't even know if that's the right word, but that tutoring model from...
Yeah. One of my first jobs was a correspondence course where the students actually mailed me their answer and I would mail them back.
I remember that.
And it was kind of one-on-one. Yeah. And I think the faculty of the future will be doing a lot more of the nurturing and checking in with the student it may not be necessary for 35 people to gather in one room together because AI will allow a lot of flexibility.
A lot of things.
Yeah.
So does that make you excited or nervous?
It makes me more excited than nervous.
Okay.
I think my nervousness would relate to whether or not we'll ever know if somebody actually did something themselves, if that's an important measure. Like if I need to know that student X actually did all of this work, if that's the bottom line, I will not know that, right? But if I can let that go and reimagine what education is and what it matters to get a diploma, I'm just excited. I think we could have our classrooms be comfy spaces more like this, where we're having a conversation and practicing the materials. Yeah.
The skill set.
Yeah.
So I think I know that you are a grandma.
I am. Yes.
And so what do you think your grandchild's educational journey would look like in the next little while?
Don't imagine. I think when she starts off, she's just 7 months old now, but when she goes to school, she'll probably be going to the standard primary school that we went to, and they will still be in the shift period. But by the time she gets to college or to university, I think that she could probably challenge a Harvard course, working through it in AI, and then challenge for the exam, or come to Conestoga and have really hands-on learning in the classroom. And the rest of it, she could be tested and prompted by AI outside of that.
Yeah. It's hard for us to imagine, right? It's hard for us to think about, okay, we have what we see now and what we know now. What does that vision going to look like? And I think there's going to be, well, we say it, disruption along the way. What is that going to kind of play out in the next little while?
Yeah, I think it's almost impossible to tell, because if you like, I've been doing as much research as I can, reading the literature, reading what people are saying, looking at what other institutions are doing. And I like Conestoga's approach because we've been somewhat cautious because nobody has figured out yet how to manage this, and making change before you have information has never made sense to me. So I've been experimenting with ChatGPT-4 and other elements, and find it incredibly fun and useful and quick. So I think that we won't see much change in the next couple of years, except an assessment of student learning. That's where we need to spend a lot of energy and decide,
right,
what do we want to know? What do we need to know? How can we get what we need to know in this climate?
Yeah. What do you think AI will do to a person's sort of career decision making?
I think there'll be probably a lot of free online testing. So it used to be quite complicated to have someone do an inventory and tell me,
these are my skills.
What is your skill set?
I remember doing survey
thing after thing. And it always came out for me as teacher, social worker, though kind of in the areas that I'm interested.
Real estate agent.
You got real estate agent?
I did.
I never got anything like that. But I think that it'll be a lot easier for students to put in what they're interested in. Maybe they'll even scan the face and say, you look like a videographer. I don't know. I think there'll be some weird and wonderful technologically driven efforts to help people decide on career choices, which again should be fun. But I mean, for me, it's more interesting because I'm not usually fazed by things. But I have to be honest, many of my colleagues and even people in my family are concerned about what's going to happen with AI.
Yeah, I haven't not jumped on the train. I have been super, super cautious. Which is, I think, odd, because I know a lot of people are jumping in and using AI to build their resumes and help them with interviews and interview questions. But I don't know, I just feel like I need to be a bit cautious, and I want to know, I worry about the biases that are embedded into it at this point in time.
I mean, most of the internet was made by white American men, right? So that's a huge bias going into there that doesn't reflect who I am, doesn't reflect who newcomers to Canada are. Right. So absolute huge biases in there. Yeah.
And I'm also more interested in hearing their story, right? Hearing the person's career journey and their story, and taking them, and the different twists and turns that we kind of inevitably face, right? And I think through that narrative, you get much more richer information, which means you are required to sit and talk with somebody and listen to them, and as you say, nurture them. Right? To get through that information.
And I do think that is kind of what we're going to see in 5 to 10 years, is that the individual for, say, career search will have these incredible opportunities at home in their pajamas to put information in, have things put out, and then the sitting down with you, you'll have a lot more information and so will they. Right. And so I think it'll be very effective then, these one-on-one conversations or small groups in the classroom, because a lot of the pre-work, like right now, we can't get students very often to do the pre-work for a course, right? Because they're very busy, they're very overwhelmed, and it seems like I can just figure it out from the class. But AI will be much more entertaining than sitting alone with a set of questions that you're supposed to have done in the LMS. So I think we'll see some good activity.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. So let's go back to finishing university.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Here you are, young person, probably, 23, 24?
Yeah.
What are we when we graduate? I forget. What was your plan for your future going forward?
It's interesting because I always saw myself as a leader. And at that time, I wasn't sure if I would just be a leader within the classroom, guiding the students on, and a leader for my kids as they came along. But I'll just say, when I started to study organizational behavior in order to teach it, and I looked at the different types of leadership styles, I recognized in myself two types of leader that I saw already in my 20s. One was a transformational leadership, wanting to make change, involving people that I'm working with. The other was charismatic leadership, wanting to, and sometimes almost to the edge of manipulation, get people to follow my vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say very early on, I enjoyed looking at that idea of leadership and was honing my skills. I'm a real introvert. So I'd been watching people for a long time. I was pretty quiet in high school. I had a limited number of friends, but I was experimenting even then with controlling them, right? Like in some interesting ways, like I can make everyone watch me analyze their handwriting for 2 hours solid and still be laughing and having fun. So from an early age, I was interested in leadership tactics and strategies. And I think I did see myself either having a full-time teaching job and enjoying different groups of students and being the leader. But somewhere along the line, I saw that I could help in other ways. And I was never afraid of taking on additional leadership positions. So it wasn't exactly free flow. But at the same time, you can imagine I had 4 kids. I still hadn't finished my master's. I knew I had to have that in order to get a full-time job. I'm teaching anywhere that they'll pay me. And I'm observing different types of organizations. Besides the colleges, I taught for the school boards, like on Saturday mornings or Tuesday evenings. And I taught in another private school. I had my own business for a while, high-level pronunciation training.
Okay.
And so I'm trying and experimenting with a lot of different things to see what I like. And so it might have looked free flow, and it certainly was piecemeal because I was on contract for everything.
Yes.
Just think about that. I'm on contract for everything, collecting money here and there, getting ready for my full-time job. So it may have looked free flow, but I think I probably, even when I said I'll do that first workshop, thought I would take over the world. Yeah, I think I thought to myself, you know what? I may like this and I may be able to do it amazingly, and then I'll do more of it and make this work the way that I have a vision for it. So I had a student once who said, you know, it's really interesting watching you because at the same time, I feel totally free, but you're the most manipulative person I've ever seen. And I was like,
how did you take that?
I was like, at first I was just slightly, I was like, how did they find me out?
Oh,
right? No, I knew that in myself because I knew that if the students were looking dull, I would like make my hands bigger and, you know, Vanna White the board and pull them out here and sit down with this student and that. So I knew that in many ways I was controlling the environment, but he was the first person who called me on that. And I've always felt there's a fine line between being supportive and charismatic and being manipulative, right? And where is that fine line? So leadership requires you to manage that line. And so that was fascinating to me. So I think many of the things I do appear free-flowing, but they probably are tactics and strategies coming together with pieces over the years.
Where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I think I read a lot when I was young. Like I'd read all of Jane Austen's books by the time I was 11 because my parents were kind of nerdy. And their idea of a big outing was to go to the library where you could take a maximum of 12 books at a time.
Nice.
And we would all select 12 books and sometimes read them in the same week. And all that data coming in gave me a lot of information to play with the world. But I was very quiet in high school, just watching all the players, which was useful too, because you need that data. understanding how different people behaved in the room with me. And when I started teaching the Vietnamese refugees and then later my first class, I understood, I think, a lot about what they needed in order to feel free to learn. So it's not that no one's born a teacher. One of the main researchers I like, Kane, did a lot of research, and he wanted to debunk the myth that master teachers are born, and he did. Master teachers are not born. They have an apprenticeship. I had mine early.
Yes.
Can you imagine the apprenticeship I had from my parents?
I can't imagine.
I went into my 20s teaching already having had a lot of experience. Someone else maybe started teaching yesterday. I had them in my workshop last night. They need about 10 years. They'll have their apprenticeship. Anyone, I think, can become a master teacher, but it takes a lot of reflective practice and you need someone to help you out.
Yeah. Because I think you're right. I think teaching is an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. So I've been teaching part-time since 2016 and I've been teaching full-time. I just finished my first year and I still feel like I'm scratching the surface.
Yeah. The literature says you need 10 years of full-time teaching and reflective practice before you can potentially move into the expert zone. So you start as a beginner, then you're a novice. You're probably in the competent phase right now. Not everyone hits that, moves over that threshold into expert teaching. There's some criteria that are required, but yeah, it doesn't come quickly. And I think I had that apprenticeship before I started teaching, and not everyone has it, so we can help them along.
Yeah. So you come out of university, and you're like, I'm taking on the world.
I've always been kind of full of myself, right? Okay. I mean, and not in a bad way, but
no.
I
hear you.
Yeah.
I do. I hear you.
Yeah. I was never concerned that I wouldn't be able to manage things like teaching or managing. And I'd worked since I was 12, picking peas and then working at McDonald's. And all. So again, that's an apprenticeship, right? Managing people in those environments. But yeah, even though I was very quiet and introverted, I think I knew at that time that I could do those things, and I had that confidence in it.
Here's a different question: do you feel like you did it?
As much as I wanted to. I mean, I did teach and do teacher training internationally these last 15 years as well, into China and Argentina and
Saudi
Mexico.
Arabia. Did you go to Saudi Arabia?
Saudi Arabia twice, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So what I was doing worked so well that when I did workshops in Toronto, somebody internationally would say, "Oh, you have to come and do this here." So I loved that. And it was a chance to see how the world operates. And I think I took on the world as much as I wanted.
Gotcha.
Then I decided that's tiring. And gardening is very satisfying. So
gardening is very satisfying.
I've always tried to balance that, right? Yeah. So I've never been ambitious. Like I never wanted to be a dean or a vice president or anything like that. I've always said, I'll stay within my sphere related to teaching.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's next? What's next for you? What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to be retiring fairly soon, and I'm excited about that. Time with my granddaughter and family, and travel and read and garden. I think I'll also continue teaching for sure. I'm teaching this semester. There's never been a year I haven't taught, so I can do that on a part-time basis and keep some other involvement with the colleges if needs come up. I leave my team, I think, in very good shape, right? Some awesome people. So I will maybe write again. I've written one really silly romance novel, but I got some traction on it and I like money. So maybe I'll try and clone it 500 times like some other authors have done.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And I've already moved my front lawn. My partner and I, we've removed all sod and it's all native plants, native to Ontario. And we're going to do the same with our 3rd acre in the backyard. So in some ways it's sad. I'm removing some of the plants, peonies and lilacs that I have loved all my life, but they are not good for the pollinators in this neighborhood. So I'm going to be on a real mission with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Because we're leaving the climate in a really bad place, and any small change can make a difference. So even if my yard is the only one on our street, which it is, that's not pure front lawn in the front, those insects and pollinators and fireflies have a place to land. So
you're going to be well occupied.
Absolutely.
With gardening, family, travel, writing, teaching.
Yeah.
What do you think the transition's going to be like?
Well, I've never been bored in my life.
Okay.
So I don't think it'll be a problem
Okay.
if I wake up in the morning and I'll find something to do, right? Whether it's organizing a cupboard or reading a book I meant to read. So I'm not too concerned about the transition. I think it'll be fine. But I haven't retired before. And I've never, even when I had my kids, the maternity leave was, I think, 3 or 4 months, or maybe it was 3 days. It didn't seem like very long.
Yeah, I was a 6-monther.
You were a 6-monther. Okay. I don't, there's never been a year that I haven't been overly busy. Right. And so that'll be interesting for me to have more control of my own time. And so we'll see.
Yeah. What advice do you have for other faculty?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to shift it to what advice do you have for other students? That's what I'm keen on.
Yeah. So for faculty, I would advise learn as much as you can about how the college operates, how the programs operate, like beyond your own class. Because when you see that class fitting into the semester and into the program and into the school and into various strategic objectives, it's much more interesting. And when you understand the gap it fills for society or for, a particular sector. So I would say, don't stay within your own course. And although it's always ideal to teach one course 3 times in a row so you feel comfortable in it, don't stick in the same courses. I tell you, I always taught anything anyone asked me to teach, and that was incredibly helpful for my understanding a broad range of subject matter. And if faculty from their previous experience, because most of our faculty are industry experts first and then coming into teaching, maybe they see something in the college like project management. We've got a large number of faculty who become involved in projects and other areas, which I think is useful and helpful. Yeah. And I would say for their teaching, stay engaged with teaching and learning. Come to our workshops.
Totally.
But beyond that.
That's actually, I wrote that down as a strength for the college, is that the PD that we have, I think, is incredible.
I think we're the only college we pay part-time faculty $40 an hour to come and learn, right? To participate in those things. So it's really, really well supported, but not everyone takes advantage of it because everyone's busy. But if they can squeeze out a workshop here and there, I think engaged learning and teaching at the same time. Yeah. For students, I think that they're wasting their money if they're not fully engaging in the courses. Right? I know you can get away with sometimes doing less than you have to for a particular course, but in the end, you'll regret it, right? I remember even some university courses, I thought, okay, I'll just squeak by and not worry about it. But now I wish I knew a little bit more about that cognitive psychology. And so, I'd say it's worth making the extra effort if you can manage with your whatever states you're trying to manage for your personal life. And I would say that they need to learn intercultural skills. I see sometimes students trying to stick with students who are similar to them or speak the same first language as they do. And that's not how the workplace is going to be. So take yourself out of your comfort zone and partner with somebody different. I would say that would be really good advice. And read something on intercultural communication. It's fascinating. And I think when I share that with students in my courses, they're like, oh,
I had no idea.
I did not understand why that person was coming at it that way and that cultures could be so different in the way they conceive things. So that would be advice for sure.
Yeah. So as you're giving advice to students and they're thinking about their career, how would you guide people to sort of think towards that what they're experiencing now is not going to be there forever, that they're in it for the long game, right? How do you think that? How would you talk to people about that? Like maybe even your own daughters as they're building their careers and as they're thinking about early, mid, later.
Yeah, I think the thing that worked best for me was to take any job somebody would pay me anything for and to fill the gaps. So I think I learned almost as much pea-picking about myself as I've learned in this role. You've got to keep going. It's sometimes boring. You wake up in the morning and all you can see is fields of green, right? So I would say to people graduating, take any job you can get and do it diligently and make connections and meet people. Volunteer where you can. I've always volunteered off and on during my life if there's some area that I wanted to learn about or contribute to. And I would say that you have, like when we look at the apprenticeship of teaching, you have to do your time, right? When you graduate, if you look at the theory and expertise as a whole, there's lots of hours and lots of data that you need to have before you're going to be able to do those things that you dreamt about. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's teaching or it's videography or it is accounting. you need to learn the ropes. And I know people need enough to survive on, but I would say to my daughter, to someone else, live as cheaply as you can for a while so that you have the freedom to travel, try new jobs, get that experience, and have some fun. And I also would say I probably had opportunities to make more money at different points in my life, but I decided to do something different that was more satisfying. Right. So there's also always that balance between moving your career forward and feeling good about what you're doing and learning the things that you want to do. Time goes by so quickly. So even the jobs that went, because I signed up for some teaching and other things that I was not particularly fond of, but I would always say that to myself. You know what? The semester is going to be over. The year is going to be over. I'm going to learn from this. And even in cases where I might have had someone managing me in another place and time that wasn't working as well for me, I was like, let me study how this leader is trying to operationalize this thing. And so I'll know what to do differently when I'm in that role. So I would say,
It's really hard though. I think it's hard for students to hear you have to put in your time, right? And that you have to hone those skills. Yeah. Because we live in a society that is very like instantaneous self-gratification. I want to be an influencer and I will suddenly make $100,000 a year in doing that. And I can be 22, so it's kind of counter-cultural almost.
Yeah, but I never thought that's why students wanted to move forward. I thought they needed more money than they could make in that entry-level job. Right. I never, And they knew that they had the skills to offer. Right. So, I mean, I think within knowing that they need to make more money and they have skills to do more than they're probably going to do, I can totally appreciate their desire to be that influencer, but it's hard to get those jobs. I had to work so hard to get the full-time job here. I had to get the work experience, make sure I had the master's degree in the right field and on and on. So I was frustrated at times. Oh, I'm on contract again. I don't know what I'm doing next time. And they're paying me less than somebody else. So I'd say you have to be patient, but grab all those opportunities and don't tie yourself down so much that you can't take them.
Yeah. I do remember you saying that to me. You're like, you need 10 years.
Yeah, I remember that conversation. I
think you'd still say that to me again today. I actually, honestly, and I would take it with as a beautiful advice. You still need 10 more years of teaching. Like to me, that is something as a goal to strive towards, right? Yeah. To kind of move to that expert level.
Yeah,
right?
I find when I describe to faculty the trajectory, like even last night about classroom management, and say, if your first class, you're a beginner, right? You've got to go through novice, you've got to go through competent, and you might get to expert. And here's some tips for how to move more quickly along that thing. People are willing to wait. I found students are willing to wait too. You're right. You might meet somebody who's got these big aspirations on day one, but most of the students I've met, they know it's going to be a long haul. They are, and especially in 2024, it's a challenging time in history. I think, grab your opportunities and plug along and move forward, and eventually you'll find what you want. Yeah,
I agree. I think those are wise words.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh my goodness, that was a delight, and it's so nice to see you again. And thank you very much.
Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Careers. If you liked this episode and want to hear more, follow us on Spotify and subscribe on YouTube. See you in the next one.